All right, so once again, reports, you can click onto these. It'll give you the summary statistics. Click in the field here to export a visualization as an image file. You can click on just this area right here and change how it's visualized. You can unlabel your axes. You can include groups. You can take away groups if you don't want them included. Let's see. Let's go down to one that's maybe a little bit more interesting, except for just like instead of a 2 answer. So this one says, what is the impact of how many believe that the cost of housing is an impact on homelessness? So this one, we're going to click in this area, and this is a breakdown bar, but we could also make it a bar chart. So I'm going to click a bar chart, and you can, once again, go down here and change the colors. You can remove some of them. Like, let's say you don't want to include some impact. You can unselect that, and then it won't show up in your chart. You can put it back in. You can click over into these different sides, and you can sort the bars based on which one got the most answers or not. You can change the title of that chart in here, like impact of cost on. You can unclick it so it doesn't show up, put it back so it's there. The metric is, the default metric is how many people said that, but you could also end up putting like the mean number of people who said that, the minimum number of people who said that, how many people responded. There's a whole bunch of different ways that you can display the data. So on this one in particular, let's go down away from that, from this chart. If you wanted to add another visualization, you could, usually what you do is you click down here, and then you add another visualization. Where is it? Anyway, we'll figure that out in a second. This is a data table. You can put like the simple data, how many times something shows up, data table here. You can also, along the side, this is like choice count. We can also display their means. So that mean score was 3.97. Well, what does that mean? Well, that averaged these scores. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So that metric doesn't make a lot of sense for that one. The default is choice count. Let's see, display the row numbers. You can click those off. You can make sure that the percentages go away. You can add all that other stuff. Here's another one. This is the number of count, but you could go over here as well to the statistics table, and it'll tell you how many people. So the lowest number for cost of housing, that was no impact. That was 1. And then maximum was very large impact. The mean was about 4. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So what we'd have to do is we'd say, well, what does make more sense? It doesn't have a median right here, right? So we could pull those data out of Qualtrics and put them into Excel, and then we could get the median. So I don't like that data right there. So we'll pull it back into a simple table. So I'm going back up to the top. If we wanted to do something like an analysis, we could go and essentially go to crosstabs. And from crosstabs, what we're doing is trying to see if there's a relationship between different variables. So I'm going to kill this. There we go. The columns are the X variables. They go across the horizon. Now in a scatter plot, that horizon would be at the bottom, and the Y values would be vertical. But in this, in a crosstab, the horizon is across the top, and they're vertical, but they're descending from the top to the bottom. So let's see. We're looking for. Let's see about this. We're going to pull variables in here. Let's see if it pulls those up as. I don't think it will. Let me see. There we go. We're going to put whether or not white people had a different experience than Oh, Black or African American. I'm not even sure there are very many people in there. And then what we're going to do is look at, do you know somebody who's been, oh, you know what, let's do it this way. All right. Know somebody who's coming close to being homeless. So in this one, we pulled this white variable. Normally there's in your data set, there will be like a yes or a no, or one group compared to another group. That'll go across the X variable. And then we're going to see if they've known somebody who's been close or coming close to being somebody who's homeless. So in this one, we have the total number of people who took the survey, 610. 475 of them were white, and 135 of them were somebody who did not select white as a race. So this is like one of those select all kind of questions. 59.4% of the white people said no, they did not, whereas 58.5% of the people who did not select white said no. Now, you select which information you want to display over here on this side. The total count allows you to see how many people were in each group. And then the column percentages allow you to make some comparisons, let's say white people and how they responded yes or no to people who did not select white. So for example, this is a 0.9% difference. So white people were 0.9% more, responded 0.9% more than non-white people to saying that they did not know somebody who was close to being homeless. Now, what would I do with, and this one, once again, is not statistically significant. This number would have to be less than 0.01 or 0.05 or 0.10, depending on your level of statistical significance. So once again, not significant. So in other words, statistically, there's no difference between white people and not white people when it comes to answering this question of whether or not they know somebody who's homeless or not currently homeless. So that's even though these numbers are different, they're not statistically significantly different. If I were going to go and report this in a table, Qualtrics does this really ugly. So what I would do is I would select this information, I would copy it, I'd go to Excel, and I would paste it in Excel, Control V. And then I remember this was the total line. That was the total. And I'd write this was white. This one was no selection. This one was total. And then this one was no and yes. No, they didn't know somebody. Yes, they did know somebody. I don't like the way the table's formatted. So what I would do is I would cut this bit, Control X, Control V, and I would take this total. I don't like it there either. Control X, Control V. I would take these, Control X and Control V. And I would slice this, Control X and Control V. And I would build my table like this. And this is the way that the data is set up for you in the other things that you saw in the other presentations. So then we could do something like P less than 0.09, wait, no, 90, like that. Is that right? 0.90. Yeah, 0.90. So if I'm writing this up, what would I do? I would say something like, we wanted to see if there's a difference between responses on race in terms of how many, whether or not they knew a person who is close to being homeless or not. So there was a 0.9% difference between white and non-white selections. In that point, people who selected white were 0.9% more likely to say no, that they didn't know somebody who was on the verge of being homeless. But that's not statistically significant, or in other words, statistically, there's no difference between white and non-white respondents when it comes to that. Then you can make your table pretty. You could, like underline it right there. Sorry, underline it right here. I don't like the way this is underlined, so I just like get rid of that. Put it here and underline on that one. And then you could cut this and put this into a Word document. Okay, we go back again. let's say you want to do a different analysis. You wanted to see if, you know, okay. So this one is, does knowing that a lot of people are veterans who are homeless change your support for care? I mean, I'm going to put this one down here because I want to see it as the outcome, and I want to see whether or not, let's say, how strongly do you agree that something needs to be done about homelessness? That's this one. Well, we do find a statistically significant relationship right here, and it'll even tell you that on the Qualtrics. So what do? Well, I would grab all this data. I'd go over here. Since sometimes it's hard to see all this stuff in Qualtrics, I'd copy it, I'd put it over here in Excel, and I'd paste it. And then I'd need to go back and label what this one is. Something needs to be done. That's what this X variable is. And then I'd go over here. Actually, before I even do that, I'm going to cut and paste this guy because I don't like where it is. It needs to be in marginal. It needs to be on the side. And then over here, I would click in likely to support. And that one was military veterans. See, you will know your survey way better than I know your survey, and I know my survey way better than you know my survey. So I can do this pretty quickly. So I'm going to put these down here because they don't look very good there. These are total counts. There we go. I'm just moving these around a little bit, controlling cutting and pasting. All right, so I'm going to put this in here so you can see what this looks like. Okay, so just for simplicity of an analysis, what we're going to do is, this is knowing about military veterans is the outcome. Sorry, is the outcome, and something needs to be done. So if you believe that something needs to be done, does it affect you? Does that affect whether or not you would change based on knowing that there's military veterans? So once again, if you neither agree or nor disagree, that's whatever percentage difference that is about, what, 3.2% different than the group that says somewhat agree. This is somewhat disagree, strongly disagree. So see, once again, Qualtrics did something silly. It sorted this data in a weird way. Strongly disagree, strongly agree, strongly disagree, somewhat agree. So I got to go back in and fix this because these are weird comparisons. So I'd go, neither agree nor disagree should be in the middle. Somewhat agree, somewhat disagree, strongly disagree. Okay, so I'm going to pull this piece out. I'm going to put it somewhere else. I'm going to put somewhat disagree right here. Put that right there. Somewhat, neither needs to go right here in the middle. And somewhat agree and strongly agree. Great. Cut this out and put this in the middle. Okay. So now I've got the, let's see, less likely, much more likely. Oh, see, they messed this up too. No change in the support should be in the middle. So I'm going to put that over here. Much more likely, much less likely. We'll put much more likely in the bottom. Much less likely, less likely to support, more likely to support, no change in support, much less likely, much more likely to support will go here. Much less likely, so less likely will go down one. Much less likely is going to go up one. And no change in support is going to go in the middle. Okay, so I don't like what Qualtrics did there, but easily solved. Figure out how to sort them so that it tells a good story. Okay. So moving from left to right here, you're looking at something needs to be done. So I think that if somebody believes that something really needs to be done, then they're probably also going to have some opinion about whether or not military matters to them. So if I look across this row, do I see any patterns? Like, are these numbers going up or down? Well, there's no real clear pattern. It's up or down, no real clear pattern here, no real clear pattern here. So what I'd say is, like, if people are neither agree nor disagree, I think that those probably maybe would be more likely to shift than somebody else on no change in support. So I would say something like, the group that said they neither agree nor disagree about something needs to be done were, compared to the somewhat agree, were 30% more likely to say they had no change in support than the somewhat agree group. Or the neither agree nor disagree were 28% less likely than the somewhat disagree group to say that there was no change in support. So these are all like really esoteric for you, but they mean something to me. So I have to make some comparisons between these columns, these different groups of people, and whether or not they change some level of support here or there. And it is statistically significantly different. In other words, somewhere in here, these groups are really different. And this X variable affected their change in support here. Now, to make that a little easier, you could see, like, break that down into two groups. So like by sex, there's no statistically significant difference. So males and females didn't respond to a call to change their support based on knowing about military. There's no difference between males and females here. There's no statistically significant difference. There is like a 3% difference here and like a 2% difference here and a 2% difference here, but it's not statistically significant. Okay, so that's how you can do some of these contingency tables or crosstabs, and we cover those in the video before class. So I'm wondering about something like, let's go back to sex, and let's look at like an interval level data. So let me pull down a piece of interval level data. No, that's not what I want. I've got to find one. Okay, so so this one is, how likely do you think it? This is on a scale from 0 to 100. These are one of those slider bar questions, and we looked at males and females and their answer to whether or not they thought that homelessness was going to increase crime in my neighborhood. And we could go back and look at that exact question. But once again, the average male response was 59.2. The average female response was 61.6. Now, here are the standard deviations. These are very large standard deviations because they're about half the size of the average. Remember, we always look at the standard deviation in reference to where it is and in comparison to its mean. Now, there's not a statistically significant difference here. So in other words, males and females, even though there is like a 2%, 2.4% difference, females are 2.4% more afraid of crime in their neighborhood from homelessness. It's not statistically significant. Okay. The other thing is, in these cells, it's asking you what you want to put there. You can do the overall statistics of percentages. That'll give you the t-score. I think actually if it clicks on there. And then the average gets reported and the standard deviation gets reported, but you can also put in a median. So let's say, for example, you didn't know what the median score was for some of your responses, you could click that here and it would show up. So that's another way to do a t-test in, that's the way to do a t-test in Qualtrics. So once again, if I were to build a table like this, I would probably pull all these out. I'd put them into Excel, copy and paste. Actually, I wouldn't even need to do that because I would just write a sentence. I wanted to see if there's a difference between males and females when it came to their support, their fear of increased crime in the neighborhood because of homelessness. The average male said 59.2, parenthesis, S equals 31.2. The average female was 61.6, parenthesis, 30.5. Conducted a statistical test and found that there is no statistically significant difference. Once you say statistically significant difference, you put up the parenthesis and you write P less than 0.30 or whatever the response is, and you end the parenthesis, and that's it. Now, if there were a difference, or if you wanted to, you could talk about the substantive differences, which is like 59.2 and 61.6, which is 2.4% difference. That's what that would look like. So you can play around in Qualtrics and do all sorts of these things to pull these over. Key points: the columns, whatever you see across the top, that is the X horizon, that's the X variable. And the rows, whatever you see across the side, that's the Y variable. And it is important which one you put in which one, because the way that the chi-square is calculated, it says this is the independent variable, this is the dependent variable, and it bases its calculation on the relationship between those two variables. So that's that.